James Carville knew how to win, and he blamed the Democratic losses this November 2nd on stupid wokeness, to which AOC fired back that wokeness is a term almost exclusively used by older people these days. So that should tell you all you need to know. What? This is a term folks like you brought out very recently and had been proudly displaying at every march since. Just last year, The Guardian declared woke the word of our era. I guess they didn't get the memo from the Mean Girls Club. We don't use that emoji anymore. Woke, please. We say fetch now.
Bill Maher is once again calling out AOC, and this time he's zeroing in on what he sees as her awkward attempt to distance herself from the very woke culture she's helped promote. You'd think after getting bruised in recent elections, the Democratic Party would take a step back and recalibrate toward the center. But instead, its most high-profile figures, especially AOC, appear determined to double down. Maher's frustration isn't subtle. From his perspective, the party didn't lose because it wasn't progressive enough. It lost because it drifted too far into ideological territory that most voters simply don't recognize or relate to anymore.
That said, I would love to have AOC on this show. There's so much to admire there. I was one of her first supporters for the Green New Deal idea. But that will probably never happen because Democrats don't go anywhere these days where they're not pre-adored. And that's my last bit of advice to them. Go where the amen corner isn't. Do Fox News. Be brave. Come here. Go everywhere. Winning is about expanding the electorate.
And Maher isn't easing up one bit. In this segment, he takes direct aim at AOC's latest comments and dismantles what he views as a carefully worded attempt to escape the woke label without abandoning the ideas behind it. He treats it less like a misunderstanding and more like a political sleight of hand. So if you're expecting a gentle critique, this isn't it. Maher goes in hard and he doesn't apologize for it.
What a great strategy, never missing an opportunity to remind voters how lame and clueless and hopelessly uncool they are, especially since those are the ones who actually vote. But okay, fine. What word would you like us to use for the plainly insane excesses of the left that are not liberalism, but something completely different? Because you can't have that word liberal from us and think it should cover things like canceling Lincoln and teaching third graders their oppressors. That's all your new thing.
Here's where Maher really sharpens the knife. He argues that AOC isn't actually afraid of woke ideology itself. She's afraid of the optics. In other words, she still embraces the worldview but doesn't want the baggage that now comes with the term. Maher sees this as branding, not reflection. He points out that while she tries to soften the language, the policies and attitudes remain unchanged. To him, this isn't about semantics. It's about a broader movement that insists it's merely progressive while abandoning core liberal principles like open debate and tolerance for disagreement. Maher's claim is that modern liberalism, at least as represented by figures like AOC, has morphed into something rigid, moralizing, and hostile to dissent.
A more pertinent question to ask about the word woke might be, why in such a short time has it gone from a rallying cry to a pejorative? If the word only made you think of rational, deserved causes like teaching a less whitewashed version of American history, AOC would still want to own it. But it's a joke because it makes you think of people who wake up offended and take orders from Twitter, and their oversensitivity has grown tiresome.
Maher extends that critique to the broader progressive wing, including figures like Bernie Sanders. He contrasts today's activism with what liberalism traditionally stood for: free speech, robust debate, and practical solutions. He also notes how the word woke itself has evolved. What once meant awareness of real injustice has expanded into a catch-all for cultural enforcement and ideological signaling. In his view, the focus has shifted away from helping working people and toward policing language, intentions, and symbolic battles that matter far more online than they do in everyday life.
Ask me all the time, why haven't you ever had Hillary or Bill Clinton on? Why didn't you have Kamala on during the last campaign? You think we don't ask? We ask these people every week. They say no. It took 8 years and a petition to get Obama on. And these are people, all people I voted for. Think about that. They're afraid to come on the show of a guy who voted for them. The Republicans, they show up.
This criticism carries extra weight because Maher has consistently invited Democrats, including high-profile progressives, onto his show. Yet many decline. Maher doesn't see that as a coincidence. His belief is simple. They know he won't play along. He won't accept talking points without pushback or let contradictions slide. Even though he's still a Democrat, he represents an older style of political engagement where disagreement isn't treated as hostility. For today's carefully managed political class, that kind of unscripted conversation is a risk they'd rather avoid.
You can give the people all the goodies Joe Manchin will allow, and it doesn't seem to buy their love. Why? Why is the party that supports so many issues that benefit the middle class still considered out of touch by 62% of Americans? In plain English, nobody likes a snob. Hillary Clinton didn't have anyone on rural research or outreach when she ran in 2016 until the race tightened just before the election. Then they hired one. And where was his office? Brooklyn. True story. Politics is local, not locally sourced. It's not artisan. It's art and stand.
According to Maher, the Democratic Party has become far too invested in political performance. Instead of focusing on the everyday concerns of voters, jobs, safety, affordability, they often cater to the loudest ideological voices. Voices that dominate social media but don't reflect the priorities of most Americans. Maher keeps returning to the same point. Politics is practical. It's local. It's about results. When leaders focus more on ideological battles than solving tangible problems, they lose trust. And from his perspective, that's exactly what's happening.
Your microaggression culture doesn't play in the Rust Belt. If a staffer hands you a speech that says menstruating people instead of women, don't say that. Say women. Don't put anyone fresh out of college in charge of the campaign. They've been given participation trophies their whole life. They don't know how to win.
Maher also revisits some of the cultural issues he believes played a role in pushing voters away. He criticizes the shift toward language that feels alien to many people, arguing that it confused rather than persuaded. He also points to education debates, where standards and accountability were replaced, in his view, by a culture that avoided hard truths in favor of comfort. He connects this mindset to broader political choices, including hiring and policy decisions that prioritize symbolism over competence. Maher's argument isn't that inclusion is wrong. It's that abandoning merit and realism comes at a cost, and voters noticed.
A lot of folks in America you come across as the cares about everybody but me party. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can find ways to stand up for these folks without being David Duke. This month, when the Democrats finally passed their big $1 trillion bill to rebuild our roads and bridges, 6 Democrats voted no because it didn't go far enough to address climate change, which I'm sure is true. What does? But this was free money from the federal government that would actually improve their constituents' lives. I can see a voter saying, you know, squad, I agree with you on climate change. But as long as it is happening, we also need money for getting the water pumped out of the subway.
Another major issue Maher highlights is what he sees as misplaced priorities. He argues that Democrats often appear more energized by global causes than by problems at home. While international issues deserve attention, he believes they shouldn't come at the expense of addressing domestic struggles like housing, infrastructure, and cost of living. He points to instances where funding or legislation stalled over ideological disagreements, even when immediate relief was on the table. To Maher, that's not principled leadership. It's paralysis caused by purity tests.
And then there's abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on. But they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Maher suggests that the tipping point for many voters came when ideological messaging began clashing openly with basic reality. Certain claims and symbolic gestures struck people as disconnected from everyday experience. Instead of open discussion, questioning those ideas often led to accusations and shutdowns. Maher argues that when debate turns into enforcement, people disengage. They don't feel included. They feel managed. And that, he says, is when trust really starts to break down.
Last week, an 85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, "We gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why." Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer. That's why. Their message to you was, "I'm an American now. I'm here. Be my lawyer, not the lawyer for the migrants showing up in my backyard."
In the end, Maher's critique isn't just about AOC or woke terminology. It's about a party he believes has lost its grounding. A party more focused on signaling than solving, more interested in appeasing activist circles than addressing real-world problems. His message is blunt. Voters didn't walk away because they hate progress. They walked away because they felt unheard, dismissed, and talked down to. If Democrats want to win again, Maher argues they'll need to reconnect with reality, welcome disagreement, and focus on outcomes instead of optics. Until then, he'll keep calling it out. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If you found this breakdown useful, hit like, subscribe for more, and I'll see you next time.